down. Dude could be. Sam, you want to sing?
The backpack, go get it. It's outside the school.
How we doing? Good morning, church family. It's good to see everyone this morning. We've got lots of people returned home. We're happy to see them. This morning, our youth are going to be leading our worship. Are you teenagers? Is that what we call you? Oh, not all teenagers yet. So we have to just call them the youth or the youth, you know. We're excited for them to lead us this morning. And Sharon's going to come and do an announcement this morning before they start. But I want you to know that they're going to be reading. We know that Ray is going to be reading from the Sermon on the Mount. And so the kids are going to be reading to you many of Jesus' words from those. I think we only do Matthew 5, I think, maybe some in 6. So we didn't read it all, don't worry. But they're going to read to us from the Sermon on the Mount, and that's how they're going to start before they lead us in worship. So Sharon, your podium, come.
Good morning, church family. We need your help. We need you to fill out elder nomination forms, and we need you to read your little article that we gave you this morning to help kind of guide your thoughts and prayers. We want you to prayerfully consider who among us would be best for this job, and we have a deadline. We need these in by March 12th. So you have 3 options. You can hand them to a committee member, which is myself, Mark, Carol, and Robin. And you can put these, if you don't catch one of the committee members, you can put it in the 2 offering boxes by the doors, and if not, you can email it to Kelly. Please read this little thing. It's got some good questions to help guide you on who you think would be best for that job. And do this all by March 12th, please. All right, thank you.
When Jesus saw his ministry drawing huge crowds, he climbed a hillside. Those who were apprenticed to him and committed climbed with him. Arriving at a quiet place, he sat down and taught his climbing companions. This is what he said.
You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you there is more of God and his rule. You're blessed when you've lost what is most dear to you. Only then you can be embraced by the one most dear to you. You're blessed when you're content with just who you are, no more and no less. That's the moment you find yourself proud owners of everything that can't be bought. You're blessed when you've worked up a good appetite for God. His food and drink is in the best meal you'll ever get.
You're blessed when you care. At the moment of being careful, you find yourselves cared for. You're blessed when you get your inside world, your mind and heart put right. Then you can see God in the outside world. You're blessed when you can show people how to cooperate instead of compete or fight. That's when you discover who you really are and your place in God's family. You're blessed when your commitment to God provokes persecution. Persecution drives you even deeper into God's kingdom.
Not only that, count yourselves blessed every time people put you down or throw you out or speak lies about you to discredit me. What it means is the truth is too close for comfort and they are uncomfortable. You can be glad when that happens. Give a cheer even, for though they don't like it, I do. And all heaven applauds, and know that you are in good company. My prophets and witnesses have always gotten into this kind of trouble.
another old saying that deserves a second look. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Is that going to get us anywhere? Here's what I propose. Don't hit back at all. If someone strikes you, stand there and take it. If someone drags you into court and sues for the shirt off your back, gift wrap your best coat and make a present of it. And if someone takes unfair advantage of you, use the occasion to practice the servant life. No more tit-tat for tat stuff. Live generously.
You're familiar with the old written law, love your friends. It's an unwritten companion. Hate your enemy. I'm challenging you to I'm telling you to love your enemies. Let them bring out the best in you, not the worst. When someone gives you a hard time, respond with a supple moves of prayer. For that you are working out of your true selves, your God-created selves. This is what God does. He gives his best, the sun to warm and the rain to nourish, to everyone, regardless. And good and bad, and nice and nasty, if all you do is love and love the lovable, do you expect a bonus? Anybody can do that. If you simply say hello to those who greet you, do you expect a medal? Any run-of-the-mill sinner does that.
In a word, what I'm saying is grow up. Your kingdom's subject. Now live it like it. Live out your God's created identity. Live generously and graciously towards others the way God lives towards you.
Please stand with us.
Oh
careful when you're trying to be good so that you don't make a performance out of it. It might be good theater, but the God who made you won't be applauding.
When you do something for someone else, don't call attention to yourself. You've seen them in action, I'm sure. Play actors, I call them. Treating prayer meetings and street corner alike as a stage. Acting compassionate as long as someone is watching. Playing to the crowds. They get applause, true, but that's all they get. When you help someone out, don't think about how it looks. Just do it. Quietly and unobtrusively. That is the way your God, who conceives you in love, working behind the scenes, helps you out.
And when you come before God, don't turn into a theatrical production either. All these people making a regular show out of their prayers, hoping for 15 minutes of fame. Do you think God sits on a box seat? That's what I want you to do. Find a quiet, secluded place so you won't be tempted to role play before God. Just be there as simple and honestly as you can manage. This focus will shift from you to God, and you will begin to sense His grace.
When the world is full of so-called prayer warriors who are prayer ignorant, they're full of formulas and programs and advice, peddling techniques for getting what they want from God. Don't fall for that nonsense. This is your Father you are dealing with, and He knows better than you what you need. With a God like this loving you, you can pray very simply like this.
Our Father in heaven, reveal who you are. Set the word right. Do what's best, as above, so below. Keep us alive with 3 square meals. Keep us forgiven with you and forgiving others. Keep us safe from ourselves and the devil. You're in charge. You can do anything you want. You're ablaze in beauty. Yes, yes, yes. Please read it one more time with us.
Our Father in heaven, reveal who you are. Set the world right. Do what's best. So above, so below. Keep us alive with 3 square meals. Keep us forgiven with you and forgiving others. Keep us safe from ourselves and the devil. You are in charge. You can do anything you want. You're ablaze in beauty. Yes, yes, yes.
Bowing here, I find my rest. morning. So one of my favorite activities in my senior English class that I repeat every year is the name speech. It's a short presentation everybody gives about their names. It's a time when my students get to share about the origins of their names or their stories from their families. Perhaps it's when I find out about their family binge watching a TV show and naming their kid after a character. Or maybe I learn that, sorry, too small of a font. Sometimes I learn that their current name is a mix-up in paperwork when their families were immigrating here. It's often when I find out that they've been named after an auntie or a grandfather or a loved one. And most commonly, it's when I get to hear about cultural traditions connected to names. I enjoy learning about I enjoy learning about the cultural meaning of their names, and it allows me to understand their families or their nations or their tribal stories. And if you don't know me, you should know that I'm fascinated about learning about different cultures. So a lot of things we take for granted, but don't be surprised when you're traveling. Don't be surprised when you're in Hong Kong and you decide to take public transportation at rush hour and you notice pushers, employers whose job is just to push more people into the train cars. And if you're attending a gathering in Mexico, don't show up on time. In fact, don't show up till much later because you don't want to insult your hosts by being rude. And when you're interacting with someone from the Middle East, hospitality is very important in their culture. Hospitality is so much more about offering a charcuterie board and a bottle of wine. It's the basis of their entire culture. Hospitality means you spare no expense as you put forward the best food and experiences. I was honored and humbled many times when I was working with Kurdish and Syrian refugees in Greece. Their families had lost everything, and yet, when invited into their homes, they sacrificed even more to welcome their guests. I remember Ali lamenting that they couldn't do more for me when I had just partaken in a 3-hour feast in which Fatima and her daughter had missed the whole day of English classes just to prepare. And when they gave me the best spot in their apartment, the one next to the fan. And when we drank numerous cups of tea, they showed me their photo album, the only thing that they had brought with them on the migrant boat from Turkey. And even as I left their flat, Ali and his sons walked me to the subway station and escorted me to my final stop to make sure that I was safe in my travels. Because in the Arab culture, hospitality is agreeing to take full responsibility for a person's safety and satisfaction. And truly it was a joy, a privilege, and an honor to be invited to their table. We see many examples of hospitality in the Bible. When Abraham was approached by 3 strangers, he offered them bread to rebuild their bodies and refresh their souls. He welcomed them to his tent without even knowing who they were. And that's what you did in his culture. And when Lot took care of his guests, he was ready to sacrifice his own people to protect those strangers. And when Elijah approached the widow, she shared all that she had, even though she and her son were facing starvation. And when the people who were listening to the teachings of Jesus became hungry, Jesus insisted on feeding all those people. His disciples were so baffled when Jesus gathered loaves of bread and fish to feed the multitude. And when the night before Jesus died, as he and his friends gathered in a room, Jesus clenched a loaf of bread, and he broke the bread and he said, "Do this in remembrance of me." And after supper, as the night grew long, Jesus took a cup, and as he blessed its contents, he exclaimed, "Drink in remembrance of me." And later, when 2 of his disciples were on the road to Emmaus after Jesus' execution, and his followers were afraid for their own lives, they came upon a stranger on a journey. And in their hospitality, despite their fear and exhaustion and grief, they invited him to stay with them. And as their guest broke the bread, they were able to see Christ. What a privilege and joy they must have felt being in the presence of him at that table. Today, we're sharing this meal, knowing it's only an appetizer. It's a glimpse of one day when we will feast together at a great banquet celebration of God. And it's Jesus who made room for us at that table. Would you join me in prayer for this meal? Father, when I think about your hospitality, I'm overwhelmed. And when I think about your love extended to me, I'm amazed. And as we take this communion today, help us to hold on to that joy of your presence and the thankfulness of being invited to the table. Help us to extend this gift of hospitality that Christ has given us so that others too can share in his blessings. It's in his name I pray. Amen.
theme assigned for this month is Jesus. And the committee organizing Sunday morning for us and the theme said that the first Sunday, which is today, is Jesus teaching. Next Sunday, Jesus miracles. The next Sunday, Jesus parables. When we looked at this Sunday and Jesus teaching, Tim said, I guess that's the Sermon on the Mount. And I said, okay, I'll take that Sunday. Some of you remember 7th and Pasqua. Anybody? Okay, if you were there in 1986, you can tune me out for the next half hour. The rest of you, listen up. I am fortunate to have lived 80 years under the influence of the master teacher himself. I am also privileged to have lived my last 60 years under the influence of people like Mother Teresa and Mahatma Gandhi. Through the years, as I took groups of people to experience Northeast India, one of the requirements was to watch the movie Gandhi. In 2022, I don't know if I've got that right, numbers are hard at this age. I was preparing a group of 7 young people to go to India. Harmony, Jonathan, Rachel, Jeremy, Shannon, Jason. We watched the movie Gandhi. Jason was completing his seminary degree. At the conclusion of watching the video Gandhi, he said, I have learned more from that Hindu than from my seminary degree about the Sermon on the Mount. And so, here we go. The Sermon on the Mount. In our Bibles, if you have the old-fashioned Bibles that are made of paper, you could put your thumb in the end of chapter 4 in Matthew, and you would find that Jesus was going east of the Jordan, to the north, to the south, and people were amazed at both his teaching and his miracles. And then you could put your other finger at the end of chapter 7, verse 28. At the end of the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew says, and the people were astonished because he taught as one who had authority, not like the teachers of the law. What does he mean, teaching with authority? Here's my interpretation. When Jesus taught with authority, he had already demonstrated it with his life. There was credibility. Look to how I live as one who had authority. And as we scan the Sermon on the Mount this morning, please see Jesus standing beside everything that we look at this morning. He gave the example and then he taught. Luke says, as he starts the book of Acts, he says, I wrote to you the Gospel of Luke, in which Jesus began to do and to teach. There we go. I call the Sermon on the Mount Kingdom Living. If you could, for the next few minutes, take the word church out of your vocabulary and think about the word kingdom. 3 times before the Sermon on the Mount, John the Baptist came preaching kingdom. Jesus came preaching kingdom. Jesus came preaching kingdom. And 7 times in the Sermon on the Mount, we have the word kingdom. Pretty hard for us in what we call a democracy country to think about kingdom. But let's give it a try. Kingdom living, by definition, is submissive. If submissive is a word that you don't like, you're in the wrong crowd this morning. It's through and through the Sermon on the Mount. Submission is kingdom living. Kingdom living is characterized by the nature of the king. Just imagine this morning if we had one person, man or woman, who could rule this country as a queen or a king. You think about how much time and effort and money and television screen we would be able to obliterate. But we are afraid to have one person in control, and that's likely a good idea. But if that person had our interests and our welfare at heart and had the wisdom and the power to perform, think of what the budget in this country would look like. Think of the things we'd be able to do if we had a king that we could trust, who was capable and able to perform. That's our King, Jesus, who is asking to be the ruler of our lives, to reign in our lives. It's kind of strange. Jesus advertised this message as good news. Can you imagine having one individual, this time the Son of God, who would be the King of our lives? Are you ready for submission? It has several requirements. They all have to do with submission. Jesus said to Nicodemus, you must be born again. Nothing to do with physical birth or whatever. It just means you better have a different framework for the way that you think about life and other people and relationships. You must deny self. Take up cross, follow me. Deny self, I think the best definition of this is found in Philippians chapter 2. Jesus did not consider being deity something to be hung on to, but he let it go and became a servant even to the point of death. That's what it means to deny self. Take up cross. I don't like it when people say, well, this ailment I have is my cross to bear. No. Jesus' cross was a cross to bear our burdens. When we bear other people's burdens, that's when we take up the cross of Christ and follow. Let's be followers. If you could, for a few minutes, remove the word Christian from your vocabulary and think about following. There are a lot of people going around with the label Christian that are yet to become followers. You must submit. God favors the humble, but he resists the proud. Kingdom living, 5 things. 5 things. You've heard me do this kind of thing before. I can only remember 5 things. I have only 5 fingers. My brother has no thumb, so he's handicapped. But kingdom living is distinctive. surpassing, motivating. You can remember that. That's in the middle. Motivating. It is liberating, and it is decisive. For the first and the last is a D. The middle is M. All you have to do is memorize the other two, the surpassing and the liberating. It is distinctive. It's quite different. We start with the Beatitudes. Blessed are. I don't think that blessed rings very well for us. There's one translation of this. It says, happy. Happy are the poor. Happy are the mournful. That's a lousy translation in my mind. God never promises us happiness. Happiness is something that happens, just happens to us. Blessing is something different. It's the patriarch laying his hand upon his grandchildren or his children or his great-grandchildren and saying, God be with you. God knows you. God recognizes you. God has a place for you. God has a destination for you. That's the seriousness of blessing. It's not a hop, skip, and a jump kind of thing. It's a very serious moment when we are blessed. In other words, I think what it means is that God recognizes. God smiles on these people. He knows you. He knows the poor. It's not happy to be poor. It's not happy to be mournful. But it's a good thing when we know that God still recognizes and sees. And then there are these two fantastic metaphors, and so simple. You are salt. You are light. Salt tastes, salt heals, salt preserves. In our country, it melts, it enhances. Light promotes growth and gives guidance and facilitates fulfilling activity. Light and salt are distinctive, and they make a difference. And so, from the readings this morning, and doesn't Eugene Peterson mess up those of us that have tried to memorize some of this Sermon on the Mount? But thank you for the readings that we had. There are 5 things in Matthew chapter 5 that are quite surpassing. Jesus said, your righteousness must surpass the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees. Please, for a moment, do not think that the scribes and the Pharisees were bad people. They were the kind of people that I would like living next door to me. They were the good people. The problem with their lives was not how they lived, but how they looked upon others and looked down upon others. Jesus said, your righteousness must be surpassing. Must be different. Must be above. And the way that you look at life is different. The way you look at the reputation of other people is sacred. Don't take it and don't diminish it. You can take it by being angry with people. I wonder how many times. Well, I'm sure you haven't had this experience. Regret for being angry with somebody. Being contemptuous, looking down. Oh, you're just a nobody. You're a doormat. You're a dingbat. Or malicious talk. The translation of that is gossip. Friends, brothers, and sisters, we're talking about some fairly serious stuff, aren't we? Jesus says, come follow me. Relationships take a priority. Even before worship, go and be reconciled. Or when there is a difference, use the SMQ method. Settle matters quickly. Have that word sorry flowing from the brain to the end of your tongue. I'm sorry. Settle matters quickly. Surpassing attitudes toward life and people. I think, this is messing with you, but I think that we have a no right to be putting down people, whether it's our government or our boss or our leaders in whatever situation. We really have to be careful about taking life from people. And then marriage. Jesus says, be serious about temptation. We as human beings, maybe I speak for myself, but I have read the story of King David, and so I'm guessing that this is an international problem of dealing with our sexuality and our temptations. Be serious about temptations. Eliminate forbidden desires. Learn to shut off the television. Learn to say, I'm not going to go to that place. I'm not going to be with these people. Marriage just about disappeared in our culture, isn't it? But that's for another day. Integrity. Surpassing righteousness. Your yes should mean yes, and no mean no. And that's the end of it. No need to have a lot of oath-taking or swearing or what. If your yes means yes and your no means no. Surpassing righteousness as far as the way we treat other people. It's not eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Gandhi said, eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and we'll soon all be blind. Someone asks for your shirt, give your coat. Go that second mile. Isn't this amazing? Amazing way to go. What a charter for our lives. And then he ends up chapter 5. Chapter 5 is just the core of everything that we believe and everything that we, the pathway for our life. And he finishes up with love. You've heard it said, and you don't have to listen to what's said. You can see how people behave in our world, can't you? You've heard it said. Love your friends and hate your enemies. But, there's always that but. But I say to you, I want you to be children of God and realize that God sends the rain, not just on church people. He causes the sun to rise, not just on the good people. What an amazing Father we have in heaven. Incredible. This is the kind of love that loves regardless. Not because of, but because of how people behave, but because of who he is. And then Matthew finishes up chapter 5, says, and be perfect, just like your heavenly Father is perfect. Not that you would live perfect lives, but you be perfect in love. Loving people. Okay. Kingdom living is also motivated. Because by now, if I'm taking this serious, I'm saying, wow, I can't do this. But there's a motivation that goes. But it starts in chapter 6 with that imperative. Be careful. I don't know about you, but if I had just heeded that through life, how many regrets would not be stirring up in my memory now that I'm 80 years old. Be careful. Actually, I live with a very special woman who that's her constant imperative. I think it's because of the way I drive and the way I act and the way I talk. Be careful. Be careful. I hope that you got a spouse or a friend that's constantly say, be careful. Be careful how you think, how you talk, how you act. Be careful. Be careful when you give. Be careful when you pray. Be careful when you fast. Do it, but don't do it to be seen. Motivations are kind of hard to figure out, aren't they? Why do I do what I do? I'm wondering why I'm standing up here this morning. What is my motivation? Why are you here this morning? Why did you come here? Why do you do what you do? If I don't get acclamations and approvals, do I still do what I do? Giving, praying, fasting. Those are just 3 examples. Jesus could have gone on and on. What's the motivation? The motivation is the same as I mentioned as we started the Beatitudes. God sees. That's kind of a scary thought when I first think about it. God sees. He saw you last night. He saw you this morning. He saw me. That's kind of scary, but it's also extremely comforting. God sees. When you give, when you pray, when you fast. But God not only sees, but Jesus promises that God rewards. So let's go for it. Ever thought that following Jesus is kind of a burden? So many things that I can't do and so many things that I ought to do. But Jesus says kingdom living is liberating. Don't store up for yourselves treasures here on earth. Why? Because there are things like moth, rust, and if they don't get your stuff, you will store it in your storage compartment and forget about it, right? And if that doesn't happen, there are people ready to steal it from you, where robbers abound. And on the internet, it's full of robbers, right? Don't hoard, don't collect. Lay up yourselves treasures in heaven. Don't worry. I don't know about this one. It doesn't seem to work for me. Don't worry. Because you can't change much. What about those regrets of 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? I'll go ahead and fuss about them, but I can't change them, right? You cannot add one moment to your life. And if you can't do things like that, why worry? Leave it to God. And don't judge. I don't like this one either. I don't like it because I am such a good critic. How would you like to have tried to be a preacher for 60 years and then sit in an audience when there's somebody preaching a lousy sermon? Maybe you can't identify. Critic. Don't judge. Oh, this one. If we could remove that from our mentality, we would be so liberated. But finally, kingdom living is decisive. Remember? It's distinctive, it's surpassing, it's motivating, it's liberating, and it is decisive. Now, it sounds like we're going to Billy Graham here, the hour of decision. Well, we are. Jesus got to this place, and I think he knew his audience, and they were saying, oh, this is too much. This is too much. But he says, enter. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open. Ask and you will receive. And make up your mind. There are two roads. There is that road that is wide, and there's the road that's narrow. You figure out where these roads are leading before you decide which road you want to follow. There are two kinds of products in your life. There are the fruits of the Spirit. What do you want to produce? Or do you want to produce thorns? Jesus says, here are the choices. You decide what the product of your life will be. There are two foundations. Kids sing the song, the wise man built his house upon the rock. And we clap our hands, but I think there's a real seriousness in that little jingle that we teach our kids in Sunday school. What's going to be the foundation of your life? Will it be the principles of kingdom living? I can't do this without going back to the Khasi Hills. In Khasi, we taught the kids how to sing, "The wise man built his house upon the rock." And it sounds like this. Real sadu tau yaka ying hala umau, badu slapula one hop, the slapula hop vodka kala duck. That sounds a lot better than the English, doesn't it? It does to me anyhow. Anyhow, that's an aside. Two foundations. It's our choice. One of the things that people are taught from speech teachers is you need to be able to put your sermon into one sentence. Jesus, did you know how to do that? Yep, he said, I got it. Matthew chapter 7 and verse 12. You know that one? It's for 7 days a week and 12 months of the year. Kingdom living is distinctive, surpassing, motivating, liberating, and decisive. Ellen and I first made our home in the state of Meghalaya in northeast India. We lived among the Khasis. That's the eastern part of the state of Meghalaya. On the western side of Meghalaya are the Garo people, different language. People look pretty much the same. They're fairly short. And the Garos, many years ago, this little song came from the Garos in the state of Meghalaya in northeast India. I have decided to follow Jesus. When Moses could not lead the children of Israel into the promised land, he gave Joshua the task of doing that. Joshua led them into the promised land across the Jordan, settled them in the land, and he lived to be 110 years old. And he gathered the people together and he says, this is our history. This is our history. You've seen what God did with us. You remember Moses. Now today, I want you to make up your mind. Will you serve the God who brought you out of Egypt, through the wilderness, across the Red Sea? Or will you serve the many other possibilities? But, he says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And I speak to mothers and fathers this morning. You can't determine what your kids are going to do in the future, but you can make up your mind this morning that to the best of your ability and your intentions, you grandparents, this is good for you too. You can decide within all of the power and influence that God gives me, I and my house will serve the Lord. And if I live to be 110, that's 30 years from now, I'm going to come back here and give you the same invitation. Choose this day whom you will follow. So, if that's your decision, please stand with me and let's try and sing this old song. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have